Well, good afternoon and welcome to this short tour. My name is Jenny Bowley and I'm a member of Lambeth Tour Guides Association, and we're working with Morley College to bring a tour guiding course to the south of River, and in particular to the borough of Lambeth. This week, Morley College is exploring travel, and I believe that today we've been celebrating staycations. So I thought we could take that one step further. There's no need to go away. You may just step outside your front door and explore the streets around you. In the next half an hour or so, I'm going to take you around the block from the door of Morley College, and we'll find some of the voices of Lambeth, discovering some of Lambeth's secrets right on your own doorstep. And perhaps you'd like this tour will inspire you to take another step further, to explore the richly diverse borough of Lambeth, and maybe even to learn how to lead guided walks yourself, so you can reveal the voices of Lambeth and the hidden stories and secret voices to other people. I thought we'd better start by just explaining where Lambeth is and what the borough consists of. So within London, it's this red part here. And then within the borough of Lambeth, Morley College is tucked away in the top right-hand corner. But the borough consists of places like Streatham, Tulse Hill, Gypsy Hill, Herne Hill, Kennington, Oval. There's an awful lot to explore. But here we are at Morley College. Before we step outside the front door, let's just pause for a moment and think about the college itself. If you're a member of staff or a student at Morley College, I wonder if you've ever thought about why the college exists at all, and how it got its name. Well, the building that we work in today was designed by Charles Voysey and Brandon Jones, completed in 1958 and opened by Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. It replaced an earlier building that was tragically destroyed by a bomb during World War II. And very tragically, 57 people who were sheltering inside at the time died. Even more tragically, some of those had been moved into Morley College after a bomb landed on the trench shelter in Kennington Park, and that one unfortunately killed over 100 people. But as a colleague of mine likes to say, in the beginning there was Emma Cons, and the story of Morley College begins with the most remarkable woman, Emma Cons. She died over 100 years ago, but it's her voice and her ideals that continue to resonate throughout the college today. She trained as an artist, but in order to earn some money, she started working as a rent collector for another remarkable woman, Octavia Hill, who'd founded a lot of social housing. And she went on herself to found the South London Dwelling Company, which housed over 600 people. She founded the theatre that today we know as the Old Vic, and she founded Morley Working Men's and Women's College. She founded this when she became disturbed at the lack of education that working men and women had access to during their lives. And they were invited into the backstage areas and the dressing rooms of the theatre, only moving out when, at over 1,000 students, there was no longer the space to accommodate them. And the college actually moved out in 1924 to the site, its current site on Westminster Bridge Road. So why isn't it called Cons College? Well, apart from the fact that that's actually rather difficult to say, it's named in honour of an early benefactor, Samuel Morley MP. He'd made a fortune in knitwear, and particularly in socks, and he was a philanthropist well known to Emma Cons, and he put a lot of the initial funding in that enabled the college to get going. Let's just stay inside for one moment, because I wonder if while you've been eating your lunch, you've ever looked around the walls of the dining room in the college. These are remarkable murals painted by Edward Borden, who'd also been commissioned to do some of the murals in the refreshment room of the earlier college that was destroyed during the war. Sit and have a look at them. They tell some of the, well, the more respectable perhaps episodes from Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. And they have a particular significance here because Morley College sits on Westminster Bridge Road, and one of the pilgrim routes down to Canterbury came over Westminster Bridge. So several hundred years ago, there would have been pilgrims walking past the front door of the college on their way to the shrine of St Thomas a Becket in Canterbury. If you want to know more, I suggest you consult the college library, which has wonderful records, but it's time now for us to step outside the front door. And these are just the places we're going to visit. Morley College is here, I've ringed it on the map. We're going to go down to the corner here and have a look at inside St George's Cathedral. We're going to walk through the garden of the Geraldine Mary Harmsworth Park. And then we're going to find some remarkable street art, murals and graffiti art, which I hope you'll enjoy looking at a bit later. But we've started right outside the front door. That's a photo taken in 2012 of the then Mayor of Lambeth and the then Principal of Morley College, outside the mural of Emma Cons. You'll find that mosaic if you come down the front steps and just look to your left. It was opened in, or unveiled, I should say, in 2012, and it's one of a series of 14. And there are 14 mosaics to a number of other remarkable women. You'll find some to the left of the front steps. The other 10 you'll find if you turn right round and look down the side of the college opposite Morley Gallery. Each mosaic has a small plaque underneath explaining why the woman has been honoured. And I do highly recommend that you take a little bit of time to go and explore them for yourself one day. So apologies for my drawing skills. I just wanted to, that's where we're ending up, which is the Old Vic Theatre. Starting at Morley College, we're going to walk down past the cathedral towards the park. And this is what the cathedral looks like on the outside. I do recommend you go through that rather imposing and perhaps slightly forbidding large front door, because inside you'll find very light, airy, open space. The church was designed by Victorian architect Augustus Pugin and was considered the most important Catholic church in England when it opened in 1848. It could seat around 3,000 people. Like Morley College, it was hit by a bomb during World War II and was badly damaged. But unlike Morley College, it wasn't destroyed, and work began on the rebuilding in 1953. If you step inside, do have a look up at the ceiling. And also, if you're interested in architecture, you might want to pop into the first side chapel on the right-hand side, where they've displayed the remains of Pugin's original high altar. But that's not the reason why I've brought you inside the cathedral this morning. I'd like to go into another side altar on the right-hand side to see a really, I think it's just beautiful work of art by San Salvadorian artists, a three-dimensional wooden cross painted with rural scenes from San Salvador. And why is this piece of modern religious art in a cathedral in Lambeth? Well, it's in honour of Oscar Romero, He was Bishop of San Salvador in the Central American country of El Salvador, and spoke out against social injustice and the violence of the military government. In 1980, he was assassinated while celebrating Mass at a cancer hospice. Made a saint of the Catholic Church in 2018. And there's a panel of information about his life inside the cathedral. There's another reminder of Oscar Romero in Lambeth, tucked away off Stockwell Road. I think it must be the shortest street in Lambeth. It's only about 5 yards long, but you'll find Romero Close. And in Romero Close, there's a plaque honouring Oscar Romero. But we're going to leave the cathedral now, and turning to the left, crossing the road, we're going into Geraldine Mary Harmsworth Park. This was formerly the grounds of the Bethlehem Psychiatric Hospital. And it was land that was bought by Harold Harmsworth, probably better known as the first Viscount Rothermere and owner of the Daily Mail. And he donated the land to be a park gifted to the splendid struggling mothers in honour of his own mother and named for her, Geraldine Mary Harmsworth. You probably know the park better for the main building inside the park, the Imperial War Museum, which occupies part of the old psychiatric hospital, and moved here in 1936. We're not going inside the museum today because I suspect that most of you are familiar with it. I'd like you instead to stroll through the Tibetan Peace Garden, which is just on the right inside the gate as we came in. This was opened and consecrated in May 1999 by the Dalai Lama. And it's a wonderful place to just sit peacefully and contemplate. There's a bronze cast of the Chalakra mandala, some contemporary Western sculpture, and there's a pillar inscribed in 4 languages, bringing voices from around the world to Lambeth. It features a quotation from the Dalai Lama, and it's in English, Tibetan, and also in Hindu and Chinese. Leaving the garden, we'll walk across in front of the Imperial War Museum. We'll see another memorial. This is a memorial that was put up to celebrate, or to remember would be a better word, Victory Day, which in Russia is the 9th of May. And when I walked past it on Tuesday, you can see there was still quite a lot of flowers which had been placed there on 9th of May this year. It's much used as a space for people to remember events. The Holocaust Memorial Day, you'll find flowers there. That's on the 27th of January. And often flowers are placed there on the 11th of November and on Remembrance Sunday. But we're going to walk out of the park now. We've left Morley College, we've come down here past the cathedral, we've popped into the Geraldine Mary Harmsworth Park to see the Tibetan garden. As we walked through the garden, we passed the Russian memorial. And now we're going to walk to the railway arches behind Morley College. And you might wonder, well, why on earth are we going to be walking under railway arches? Perhaps you've always seen them as rather dark or forbidding places. But I do encourage you to one day to stroll up the road and have a look at them. We're starting in Hercules Road, and then we'll turn left down here on this road, which goes underneath that railway arch. And why are we starting in Hercules Road? Well, that's where the 18th century poet and painter William Blake lived for 10 years. He lived in a 3-story house that was actually demolished in 1917, but this plaque has been put up to honour him on the block of flats that now occupies the site, and you'll find it on the right-hand side as you walk up the road. But we're going to divert into one of the many tunnels, and in there we'll find what's probably the largest gallery of Blake's artwork in the world, all done in the form of mosaics organised by South Bank Mosaics, based in the crypt of St John's Church, Waterloo, and using hundreds of volunteers over many years. I can't bring all these dozens of mosaics to you. Again, I encourage you very strongly to wander through and have a look at them for yourself. And after walking down Centaur Road from Hercules Road, if you turn right and look, we're going to walk back through the arches on Carlisle Lane, because down there, as well as many other beautiful mosaics with inscriptions from and copies of Blake's work, find a series of projections made by pupils from the Oasis Academy on the South Bank. And as their first projection says, they're giving you a snapshot of how the area grew from rural marshland to thriving cultural epicenter. You could spend hours looking at the wonderful murals and projections along this tunnel. And in fact, I probably have. But now we have to leave it. Exiting the tunnel, we're going to just take a little turn to the right. Have a look at a building that you may have walked past many times and not spared it a second thought. Called now Westminster Bridge House, but I'll show you a 19th century picture that describes what it used to be. It used to be the cemetery station known as the necropolis. And those doors were the entranceways for funeral parties. The whole funeral cortege, the coffin, the mourners, the followers, they would all be loaded onto the train from this cemetery station. And when I say the train, there was a daily train. It ran every morning at 11:40 with funeral parties, taking a 23-mile journey with no stops, and took about 40 minutes. And then returning after people had had the funerals and the burials and probably a party or a wake at the cemetery, returning up at 3:30. Well, it was very much a class-ridden society at the end of the 19th century, and funerals were also designated by class, because surely it wouldn't do for a third-class coffin to travel in the same carriage as a first-class coffin. But when they got to Brookwood Cemetery, they might find themselves being buried side by side. Brookwood Cemetery, named the London necropolis, at that time was the largest burial ground in the world. But we're returning back to Lambeth. This is the walk we've taken so far, and we've just come into Westminster Bridge Road and had a look at this building, the Necropolis Railway. We're going to walk now down Westminster Bridge Road under the arches, which sadly at the moment, this is the main road and there's no wonderful decoration. But when we turn to the right, we'll find something quite spectacular. Well, it doesn't look very spectacular. And these arches, the entranceway to the Leake Street arches, I don't think that gives you any hint of the riot of colour that awaits you when you go through. It's a 300-metre tunnel with an ever-changing canvas of colourful murals. It's the city's largest legal wall, and it's been the main focus of street art and street artists since 2008. As you walk through, you might be lucky enough to see an artist practicing on the wall. And why has it become, excuse me, such a popular venue? Well, if you remember it in the early years of this century, it was damp, it was dark, it was gloomy. It really was not a pleasant place to walk through. And then in 2008, British street art superstar Banksy decided to hold a street art festival called the Cannes Festival in the tunnel. And he invited the biggest and brightest names on the international street art scene to come down and put up a piece of work. And it's gone from strength to strength ever since. As I say, it's perfectly legal to paint on this wall. If you're a budding artist with a couple of cans of spray paint tucked away and you're just looking for somewhere to inspire you and get you started, well, look no further. Head for a wall in the Leake Street tunnel. And some of the really ambitious have painted on the ceiling as well. I'm not quite sure how they've managed that. Then coming out again, out of the Leake Street arches, we come into the Cut. I got there the other day just as they were setting up for their street food, and the smells were absolutely wonderful. I was so tempted, but it was still a little early in the day. You might want to stop and buy yourself your lunch before heading further up the road to our final destination. Or you could stop in the Waterloo Millennium Green at the end of Baylis Road and eat your lunch while looking at the Old Vic Theatre. Well, our walking tour this morning is finishing where Morley College began, at the Old Vic Theatre. And there's a little patch of open land. It's opposite the front of the theatre, just on the other side of the road here. And that's been named Emma Conn's Gardens in honour of Emma Cons. There have been a lot of changes since she opened up the backstage areas and dressing rooms, not least the introduction of a bar. Emma was a passionate believer also in the temperance movement, and her original reason for opening the Old Vic was to open it as a coffee house with entertainment. So a place where people could go and get music hall style entertainment, but without the alcohol. We just walked up Baylis Road, as I mentioned, and in the late 19th century, Emma Cons handed over management of the theatre to her niece, Lillian Baylis, yet another remarkable Lambeth woman. And it was her who brought the Royal Shakespeare, who brought Shakespeare to the theatre. And when she also took over management of Sadler's Wells, it was Lillian Baylis who founded what we know today as the English National Opera and English National Ballet. But I like to see that this small plot of land still carries Emma's name forward, though I suspect that she might prefer me to refer to her as Miss Cons. So here we are at the Old Vic Theatre. It's really rather appropriate that if you were to walk back now to the college, coming down through the Waterloo Millennium Green, you'd be walking down Morley Street to get back to Morley College. But there is, as I hope I've demonstrated, even within a stone's throw of one building, there's a lot of magic to be found, a lot of history, a lot of stories, a lot of modern voices as well. And Lambeth has such a lot to offer. It's only 3 miles long and 7 miles long and 3 miles wide. I suppose it depends which way you look at it. But what else could we find if we took another half-hour tour somewhere in the borough of Lambeth? Well, did you know that Loughborough Junction was in Lambeth? Did you even know that a place called Loughborough Junction existed? Or that there's a market in Herne Hill? Or you can wander across Clapham Common. Perhaps you know the fabulous town hall in Brixton, or soon opening on the new Northern Line extension will be Nine Elms Station. You probably all recognise the London Eye. Many of you may have visited the Royal Vauxhall Tavern. And then there are the wonderful housing estates dotted around, from the old houses in lots of old squares. Walcott Square is just tucked away behind the Imperial War Museum, or the imposing blocks on the Loughborough estate, and little churches and other religious buildings. This is St Paul's Church in Clapham that opened in 1815. And we've seen some of the street art today and public art that decorates Lambeth. Well, almost everywhere you go, you'll find small mosaics, murals, paintings. The mural of Bowie is in Brixton. The latest, or one of the latest large murals in Brixton, very sadly, is to this gentleman, Ty, who's a COVID victim. And then there's the Victorian art, the wonderful Royal Dalton building at the bottom of Lambeth High Street. Or maybe you know the bronze woman statue outside Stockwell Station, or you've paid tribute to Mary Seacole, the Jamaican nurse whose statue is outside St Thomas's Hospital. And I've promised my colleagues that I won't end this talk by singing, which is what I threatened to do. But perhaps I can just give you that little reminder of one of the ways that Lambeth is probably best known. Thank you for joining me this afternoon.